Post 1. 6 months ago, my wife Tessa had a real health scare. It was the kind that turns your stomach to ice while you sit in urgent care chairs that feel like school desks. The diagnosis was treatable but not trivial. From that first night, I moved into project mode. I color-coded her medication chart. I set alarms for doses that could not be taken near food and the ones that had to be. I chased prior authorizations when the pharmacy said the insurance portal was processing. I kept a notebook where I wrote every side effect so we could describe it clearly to the specialist. I cooked bland meals on the days her stomach turned and high protein on the days the nurse said she needed more fuel. I drove to blood work at 6 in the morning, sat with her during infusions, and checked the portal for lab results so I could call the office before their phones filled up. It was a season with a shape to it. You put your head down and carry. At the same time, Tessa started going to a wellness class at a studio near her office. Breath work, journaling, aromatherapy, the whole package. I did not mind. If lavender oil and stretching made the bad days hurt less, good. But I watched her language tilt. The surgeon was one perspective. The medication was Western. The class was root cause. I kept filling the pill box and booking the follow-ups. I told myself that both can be true. A thing that smells nice can coexist with a thing that actually moves lab numbers. 3 months into treatment, her labs turned the corner. The specialist smiled for the first time and said the plan was working. Tessa cried in the parking lot and said she could finally breathe. I cried too. Then she posted a long caption with a photo of a corkboard covered in affirmations. She thanked the wellness class for helping her heal. She did not mention the medication by name. I let it go because the portal numbers were better, and I was too tired to pick a fight with a social media post. Last Saturday, she asked me to sit down after dinner because she had something big to talk through. She poured tea into the good mugs. She wore the soft sweater she pulls on when she wants to be persuasive. She said the health scare changed her, and she needs to reclaim joy. She said we have been operating on autopilot, and she refuses to go back to a life that feels small. Then she said she wants a reset, and by reset she meant a hall pass to sleep with Owen, the breathwork instructor from her class, for closure, clarity, and embodiment. She said it like a person announcing a sabbatical. She added that her friends at work think a controlled experiment would be healthy and that a loving spouse would support that growth. I asked if there had been anything physical already. She said no, but she feels a connection and wants to explore it with intention. She framed it as medicine for her spirit. She said the health scare taught her that she cannot ignore her heart. I heard my own heartbeat in my throat. I thought about the notebook where I wrote down every tremor and fever so the doctor could adjust dosages. I thought about the morning I set my alarm for 4 because her 6 a.m. lab window mattered for the trough level. I thought about the way her hand gripped mine until the infusion drip beeped. I took a breath and said I would absolutely not be consenting to an open marriage. I said if she felt compelled to see someone else, that was a separation decision, not a lifestyle choice. I said I would try couples counseling if she wanted us to work on intimacy and resentment. But I would not pretend a unilateral hall pass was healthy. She went very still, then called me rigid. She said I keep score, and this was exactly the kind of controlling energy that made her feel invisible during treatment. I reminded her, as evenly as I could manage, that I did the logistics so she could rest. I did it because I am her husband and I love her. I am not asking for a parade. I am asking for the simplest boundary in a marriage: fidelity. She said I lack imagination and that long-term couples reinvent themselves. She said she deserves this, especially after everything she has been through. I asked how long she had been thinking about Owen. She said since the second class, when he shared an aligned breath practice. I asked if he knew she was married. She said yes, and that made him even more appealing because he is beyond jealousy culture. My chest went tight. I said if she proceeds, she is choosing to end the marriage. She said I was threatening her happiness. I said I was describing a boundary. She said her coworkers had my back because they adore me and want us to be stronger on the other side. That sentence made my skin feel strange. I pictured people who barely know me voting in a break room about my life. I slept on the couch. In the morning, I made coffee and listened to her hum while she dressed for class. She kissed my cheek and said she hoped I would reflect and come back with a more expansive heart. I stared at the pill organizer on the counter and wondered how we got from trough levels and infusion beeps to this. I am not proud of how hurt I feel. I am not embarrassed to say I am hurt either. The health scare taught me many things. One is that love shows up early and sits quietly in ugly rooms. Another is that bandwagons do not hook up IV lines. I am willing to do work with a therapist if the issue is resentment or changes in desire after an illness. I am not willing to greenlight a fling with a man who teaches people how to breathe while I pretend this is wellness. Am I the jerk for refusing to support a hall pass with the wellness instructor after carrying the emotional and logistical load through my wife's health scare? Comment 1. Not the jerk. Caregiving is not a debt that you now owe in freedom points. Open marriage requires mutual consent. If she proceeds unilaterally, that is cheating. Document everything, suggest counseling, and protect your finances. Comment 2. Not the jerk. Her labs improved because of medication and treatment adherence you helped manage. Alternative practices can be supportive, but they did not replace care. Hold your boundary. Couples therapy or separation, not a hall pass. Update 1. I did not expect a chorus so fast. Tessa went to brunch with coworkers and her sister Rachel the morning after our talk. By late afternoon, my phone filled with texts that all had the same shape, even if the words were different. Healing journey. Main character season. Life is short. A couple of her work friends sent me paragraphs about stress and rebirth and how a supportive husband would encourage exploration after trauma. One wrote that a brief reset could save our marriage. Another said monogamy should evolve with health realities. I stared at the screen and kept hearing infusion beeps in my head, which is apparently what my brain now plays when people try to rewrite the rules. Rachel called and said the quiet thing out loud. She told me Tessa deserves joy and that I should treat Owen as a temporary chapter. She used the phrase hall pass without flinching. When I asked if Rachel would say the same thing if our positions were reversed, she said it was different because I had not had a health scare. I reminded her gently that I had slept in chairs and set alarms and learned how to translate lab numbers into questions. She said I was keeping score again. I wanted to ask who else in their group was keeping score of all the times Tessa cried into my shirt at 3 in the morning while I rubbed the back of her neck and counted her breaths. I did not ask. I said I loved Tessa and would go to therapy, but I would not consent to any version of an open relationship. Tessa came home from brunch buoyant. She said it felt good to be seen and that everyone agreed a controlled experiment would be healthy. She framed it as prevention, like a vaccine against resentment. I said quietly that consent is not a vaccine. It is a door two people both agree to open. If one person unlatches it while the other is holding the handle shut, that is still opening the door. She said I was being literal. I said literal is how we got better, one dose at a time. The caregiving ledger came up again. She said my charts and alarms were controlling and that I needed to stop acting like I had earned veto power over her body because I managed logistics. I said I was not seeking veto power. I was asking for fidelity in a marriage we both vowed into. I told her I would happily book a couples therapist and that we could talk about how the illness changed intimacy and whether we needed to recalibrate routines. I said we could explore why she wants to bolt toward a stranger instead of bringing frustration to me. I said we could do all that work if the baseline remained that neither of us would date other people. She said therapy sounded like punishment, like homework for a problem that had a simpler solution. I asked what the simple solution was. She said approval. I do not enjoy arguing in my own kitchen. It makes the refrigerator feel like it is listening. So I wrote her a letter. It said, I love you. I am grateful your numbers improved, and I want our marriage. I am willing to do couples therapy. I am not willing to open our relationship. If you proceed with Owen, I will consider it infidelity and act accordingly. The letter was 3 paragraphs. I printed it and placed it under a magnet near the pill organizer that I still refill because we still have follow-ups. She read it and said she felt judged. I said I was not judging her desire to feel alive. I was naming the cost of getting there by stepping on us. The social part of this is harder than I expected. People who barely know me now have opinions about whether I am controlling. One coworker posted a vague story about men who weaponize spreadsheets. I have never met that coworker. Another wrote that friends who survive medical crises often need to rewrite their scripts, and that partners should not hold them hostage to old identities. I typed and deleted 10 replies. I settled on a single sentence to Tessa. Please ask your friends to stop posting about our marriage, even indirectly. She wrote that people were just being supportive and that she could not police their words. I keep hearing myself apologize for sounding rigid. Then I remind myself that I am not asking for anything exotic. I am asking to remain married to the person who promised me that word. I am not perfect. I have been impatient when she was scared. I have tried to solve feelings with logistics. I have missed cues because I was tired. But I did not find a breathwork class and decide a new instructor will give me closure. I did not ask a group to vote on whether my vows still apply. I did not post captions about healing without once naming the treatment plan that actually changed the numbers. Malik, my best friend, came by with takeout and sat with me while I built a calm message to Tessa's sister and 2 coworkers who had messaged me directly. I thanked them for caring about Tessa and asked them to respect that we are not opening our marriage. I said we are seeking a couples therapist. Rachel wrote back, "You are suffocating her." The co-workers did not respond. Malik said, "Sometimes silence is a relief." We watched a dumb cooking show until I stopped clenching my jaw. Practical steps help. I started a small notebook for myself that is not about meds. It has 3 lists. Couples therapy options with openings. Financial housekeeping tasks in case we slide into separation. Sentences I can say when I feel cornered. Top of the last list is, I will not be discussing our marriage with your friends, and proceeding without mutual consent is cheating. Having those lines near my hand keeps me from chasing circles. Tessa told me she wants an answer by the end of the week. Approval or not. She said it without malice, as if she is asking me to RSVP. I said the answer is no and has been no. She said I was choosing fear. I said I was choosing us. Or if that is not on offer, choosing me. I know some will say I should be kinder, more imaginative, less attached to a model that did not protect us from resentment during illness. I am trying to be kind. I am willing to be imaginative about therapy, scheduling, and ways to rebuild closeness. I am completely uninterested in being imaginative about fidelity. If that makes me the rigid one at brunch, I can live with it. Am I the jerk for still saying no when her friends and sister are calling me, controlling, and urging me to be supportive of a one-time hall pass after her health scare? Comment 1. Not the jerk. You offered couples counseling, named the boundary clearly, and refused to let a friend group vote on your marriage. Document everything and keep finances tidy. If she proceeds, it is cheating with consequences. Comment 2. Not the jerk. Begin quiet prep now. Copies of key documents, separate account for paycheck deposit if needed, and a consult with a family lawyer. Boundaries are only as strong as the plan that backs them. Update 2. I did not expect to watch people vote on my marriage over mimosas, but that is what happened. Tessa went to another brunch with her coworkers and her sister Rachel. A group chat spun up afterward, and someone accidentally added my number. I did not type a word. I watched the scroll. At first it was pep talk phrases about joy and living boldly after fear. Then it became a poll. Literally a poll. One of the co-workers posted a story template with sliders. Does Tessa deserve a reset? Should she experience joy with Owen? A heart reaction here, a clapping emoji there, and suddenly my consent had been converted into a tally. Rachel wrote, "This is not about cheating, it is about reclamation." Another coworker said, "He is lovely but rigid. Let him catch up." I stared at the screen and felt that infusion room beep start in my head again. It is my new barometer for when the ground tilts. Tessa sent me a message a few hours later with a tone that read like a memo. She wrote that, after processing with her community, she was moving forward with a trial openness for 4 weeks. She called it a container. She said we would debrief weekly and hold to rules like no overnights and no emotional entanglement. She framed it as a gift to our future. She closed with, "I hope you can be supportive." I read the message 3 times. The word trial made my ribs feel cramped, like there was not enough room for breath under my shirt. I replied with one sentence I had written in my notebook, so I would not reach for apologies when I needed a line. Proceeding without mutual consent is cheating. If you move forward, I will respond accordingly. She wrote back that my binary thinking was the problem. I put the phone face down, not as a gesture, just to give my hands something to do other than type a paragraph that would be read as an attack. Malik came over and sat at the kitchen table with me while I made a plan. We listed practical steps, photograph key assets and serial numbers, scan tax returns, change my direct deposit to a separate account if needed, pull a free credit report, price short-term leases and month-to-month apartments in my zip code and two over. Identify a couples therapist and, separately, a family lawyer for a consult if the line was crossed. It felt disloyal to write the name of a lawyer while my wife was alive and well and humming in the bedroom. It also felt like putting on a seatbelt because the person next to you is announcing they might suddenly break. That night, Tessa said she was headed to class. She wore a long cardigan I had always liked and a new cuff. I kissed her cheek out of habit, then felt foolish in my own kitchen. I said, "Please do not," and it came out softer than I intended. She shrugged and said, "We will debrief Sunday." I heard the word "we" and thought about how a person can use the same pronoun to name two different futures. 40 minutes later, a friend sent me a screenshot of Tessa's story. She had not blocked me. She simply did not consider that I would be watching. The photo was abstract. A candle, a mat, a man's forearm and wrist at the edge of the frame. The wrist wore the same braided bracelet I had seen on Owen when Tessa first asked me to sit at the kitchen table and listen. The caption said nothing about breathwork. It said, embodiment. I zoomed in on the corner until the pixels fuzzed and then laughed because the last thing I wanted to become was a detective of risks. I texted exactly what my notebook told me to text so I would not improvise a monologue. "This is not mutual. If you continue, I will begin a separation process." She wrote back, "You are making this adversarial." I wrote, "I am naming a boundary." She sent a heart, which felt stranger than anger. I moved a change of clothes and toiletries to my car. I photographed the ring insurance and our lease. I created a folder on my desktop labeled Housekeeping. Malik suggested I book a free consult with a lawyer now, before my judgment was frayed. The lawyer spoke to me the next day and told me to keep a written record of each communication, to avoid leaving suddenly unless I felt unsafe, and to decide in advance what conditions would trigger a separation. He said the most expensive part of regret is hoping someone behaves like the person you thought they were, while they are actively telling you they will not. He sounded like a person who had sat across from other men who wanted a sentence that made this neat. He did not offer one. He offered a list. I can work with a list. The brunch crowd escalated the narrative in parallel. Someone posted a graphic about partners who fear growth. Another wrote that timelines shift after illness and that couples who survive reimagine together. Rachel tagged Tessa in an article about radical honesty and wrote, "Proud of you." I messaged Rachel directly and said, "Stop discussing our marriage online. If you have thoughts, send them to me privately." She replied that I was silencing women. I stared at that sentence for a long minute and then closed the app. 2 days into the container, Tessa stood in the bedroom doorway and said she would be late. I asked, clinical, "Will you be with Owen?" She said, "I will be with people who see me." I said, "Okay." The okay was not approval. It was the sound a person makes when they have put their go bag in the trunk and their phone charger in the side pocket. Later that night, messages started arriving out of order, like cards falling from a deck. First, a photo of a teacup on a table I did not recognize. Then a message from Tessa saying she hoped I could see that this was not about sex. It was about re-inhabiting her body after fear. Then silence. I watched my own hand reach for my notebook, even as part of me imagined what the room smelled like wherever she was. I wrote one line I needed to see. "You do not owe anyone your sanity to prove you are supportive." The next morning, I sent Tessa a link to 3 couples therapists with openings and said I could attend any of them this week. She wrote back, "Let us debrief Sunday." I drove to the bank on my lunch break and opened a separate checking account for my paycheck. I told the banker it was for budgeting. It is not. But the sentence sits better than saying, I am preparing for the kind of honesty that does not spare both of us. I am grateful to the strangers here for the clarity I can borrow when my chest feels tight. Without it, I would still be arguing about vocabulary in my kitchen, which is the kind of fight that never ends. With it, I am moving. Not out, not yet, but in the direction of a life where consent is a door I get to hold. Comment 1. You are doing this right. Unilateral trial openness is cheating with branding. Keep your messages short, your records tidy, and your exit plan practical. Consult kept, accounts prepped, housing scoped. Good. Comment 2. Document the story post with the bracelet, but do not play detective with wrists. Your boundary is enough. Line up a therapist for yourself too. Even if she backs down, trust has a dent that needs real work. Update 3. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted every vague photo and bracelet and container to be an overinterpretation. Last night removed all doubt. Tessa texted at 5:40 p.m. that she would be late, debrief Sunday, and not to wait up. At 6:10, our neighbor, Mrs. Payne, called to ask if we could please remind guests not to block the shared driveway. She has a kind voice that makes hard things sound soft. I asked what car. She described a white van with a Lotus decal. Owen's studio uses the same decal on their flyers. I thanked her and said I would ask them to move. I did not. I sat very still for a full minute and listened to my own breath. I walked outside with my phone camera and took a time-stamped photo of the van. Then I walked back inside because I refused to become a man lurking in hedges. At 9:27 p.m., Tessa sent a photo of a teacup next to a journal. The table was our dining table. In the reflection, I could see the edge of a man's elbow. I closed the messages and opened the Notes app. I wrote, entry 927 photo, man present, home. I felt calm in the way you feel in waiting rooms after you have already cried. At 9:40, I knocked on the bedroom door. Tessa opened it flushed and bright-eyed, the way people look after a 3-mile run in cool air. Owen was behind her, barefoot, holding his sandals like a person leaving a beach. He made eye contact with me and did something like a bow. Tessa said, we were just finishing breath work. She said it with a softness she does not use on ordinary days. I said, Owen, please leave my home. He opened his mouth to speak about energy. I held up a hand and repeated the sentence. He walked out holding his sandals, passing the van like a cue in a play. Tessa started to narrate. She said this was a breakthrough and that she finally felt her body as safe and whole. She said she wanted me to be proud that she was healing. I said the line I have been practicing so I would not improvise something cruel. Proceeding without consent is cheating. She said labels are cages. I said I was not labeling her. I was naming my boundary and the consequence. She blinked like she had not expected a door to open in the direction of action. I did not stay for a debate. I packed the go bag I had already staged with essentials and added the ring insurance, my passport, 2 days of clothes, and the thumb drive with scans of our paperwork. I said, I will be at a motel for a few nights. I will send you a written separation notice. Any future contact should be by text or email. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. She asked me to wait and talk like adults. I said, we are, and picked up my keys. At the motel, the room smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet, which is still better than the smell of someone else's sandals in your hallway. I sent a short message to Tessa confirming I had left, that I considered the marriage broken by her choice, and that I would be consulting an attorney in the morning. She responded with 5 texts in 20 minutes that swung from adoration to anger to sorrow to a memory about our first date. I did not answer. Malik called and stayed on the line while I brushed my teeth because sometimes you need someone to hear the sound of your breath to remind you you are not just a list of tasks. At 8 a.m., I called the family lawyer who had given me the consult and asked for a retainer agreement. I forwarded him the timeline, the photos, and my written boundary statements. He told me to send one formal separation notice, to avoid back and forth, and to establish a plan for mail-in bills. He also told me to secure a new mailing address before serving papers so I am not sorting legal envelopes on a doormat that smells like eucalyptus oil. There was something grounding about hearing legal words applied to a situation that had been all feelings and scented language. I reserved a P.O. box, moved my paycheck to the separate account, and emailed our landlord asking about early termination options for the lease or a transfer to my name if I took over a smaller unit in the same building. The landlord replied that we could discuss options once papers were filed. I sent a polite thank you and closed the tab before I could draft a paragraph explaining that I am the kind of tenant who fixes dripping faucets before reporting them. Then I sent one message to Tessa. It said, I am separating and pursuing a divorce. Please direct all future communication to this email. I will arrange a time to collect personal items. I will not be discussing Owen, your friends, or your posts. Any contact at my workplace is unacceptable. She responded with, please do not do anything drastic. We can talk Sunday. I wrote back, the drastic thing happened last night, and muted the thread. By noon, the circle that had been so loud about bravery found a new tone. One coworker messaged me that I was being cold and suggested I give Tessa a month to complete the work. Another wrote that a lot of couples take a breath after illness and that my reaction was a trauma response. I repeated my single-sentence reply so I would not feed a debate with strangers. Proceeding without mutual consent is cheating. I will handle the legal process with respect. Please do not contact me again. Rachel called and left a voice message crying and asking me not to blow up the family. 10 minutes later, she texted, I did not realize it would look like this. I did not reply. I sent her a copy of my separation email to Tessa and asked her to stop posting about my marriage. She sent back a single word. Okay. I expected to feel like I had jumped. It feels more like I was already falling and found a ledge. At the motel desk, the clerk did not ask why I needed 3 nights. He slid a key card across the counter and offered a map of a walking path around a small pond. I walked the loop twice and watched a pair of geese act like a guard detail. I breathed in counts of 4 because it helps, even if the man who teaches breathwork turned my house into a set. Breath is not his, it is mine. I know some will ask if I tried therapy first. I did. I offered it twice. I will still attend therapy, now for myself. I will grieve the marriage once the logistics are set. But I am done negotiating while someone else spins a jar marked consent on the table like a toy. Love can survive illness. It cannot survive a vote at brunch that converts vows into sliders. I will update once the attorney files and I finalize a short-term lease. For now, I am going to eat motel fruit, answer Malik's text with a photo of the pond, and sleep in a bed that no one else used for healing. Comment 1. You handled the confrontation with precision. No scenes, no shouting, clean exit, written separation, lawyer retained. Keep all messages brief and in writing. Do not respond to coworker commentary. Protect your workplace. Comment 2. Contrarian. You are overreacting. She survived a health scare. One spiritual reset could help her reconnect. You should have tried monthly check-ins and a therapist before packing a bag. OP replied to comment 2. I offered couples therapy twice. She chose a unilateral trial openness and brought a man into our home. Proceeding without mutual consent is cheating. I am letting the legal process do the talking now. Update 4. The morning after I left for the motel, I sent 3 emails. One to my attorney with the timeline and photos. One to our landlord asking about options once papers were filed. One to Tessa, repeating that all contact should be by email and that I would retrieve belongings with a witness present. Then I put my phone face down, not to make a point, but to give my hands something to do besides answer messages from people who had turned my marriage into a discussion prompt. The reversals began quietly. Malik texted that Rachel wanted to talk. I said email only. She wrote a short note that began with, I did not realize it would look like this. She attached screenshots of the brunch poll, the group chat where coworkers labeled the affair a container, and a video clip of Owen leading breathwork in our living room, while the pill organizer sat on the counter in the background. Rachel's message ended with, I am sorry, I did not write back a speech. I wrote, please stop posting. Thank you for sending this. My attorney asked if I wanted to send a curated packet to close family before the rumor mill hardened, so my story did not rely on hearsay. I chose 5 items. My boundary letter, Tessa's trial openness text, a time-stamped photo of the van, a still of the living room with Owen's elbow and the pill organizer, my separation email. He sent them on my behalf with a subject line that did not editorialize. The goal was to make speculation unnecessary. Within hours, the tone shifted. A cousin who had liked the Healing Journey posts wrote that she had been reckless and deleted her story. An older aunt emailed that she was ashamed she had encouraged exploration after recovery because she had seen how much time I spent at appointments. She remembered a night when I carried a blanket to the infusion center and thought I was just being sweet. She did not know it was the third time that week. I read the email 3 times and felt anger and gratitude take turns in my chest. Tessa sent 2 long emails. The first said I was cruel to involve a lawyer and that a divorce would be throwing away a strong foundation. The second said she now understood how it looked and asked for one more chance to set her own boundaries with Owen and rebuild ours. She used the phrase recalibrate. She did not name what had happened as cheating. My reply was 1 paragraph. I am pursuing divorce. I will coordinate a time to collect my belongings. Do not enter my workplace. All future contacts should be through this email. She wrote back, please Malik can be there, which told me she had finally absorbed that an audience would exist for the handoff. Housing moved from spreadsheet to keys. I toured 3 apartments and chose a small place on the second floor with morning light and a kitchen window that looks at a maple tree. The lease is month to month for now. The manager shook my hand and said, I hope it is a good place to rest. I signed and transferred utilities. I set up a P.O. box and forwarded my mail because my attorney was right about not sorting legal envelopes in a hallway that smells like eucalyptus oil. The landlord responded about our current unit. Because Tessa wanted to stay, he would transfer the lease to her name if she qualified. He asked me to sign a release once the transfer was complete. I agreed with the condition that no joint liabilities remain. I sent the note to my attorney for exact language. Reading about liabilities felt like rinsing sand off my hands. Necessary and mildly irritating, but worth doing right. I scheduled the pickup for Saturday afternoon. Malik came as my witness and buffer. Tessa was composed in the way a person is when they have practiced expression in a mirror. She said I looked good. I said thank you and went to the bedroom to collect clothes, books, and my shoes. We moved like polite strangers in a narrow hallway. Owen was not there. The pill organizer was half full. For a second, I wanted to refill it on autopilot. My hands remembered the rhythm. I put them in my pockets instead. As I was packing, Rachel arrived with a casserole and tears, saying she had apologized to our mother for boosting the hall pass. She told Tessa softly that the brunch vote was cruel. Tessa's face flickered. For a moment, I saw something like recognition. Then she turned to me and said she wished I had chosen imagination. Malik answered for me because that is why he was there. Imagination does not mean ignoring consent. He did not raise his voice. He did not make a speech. He just said the sentence like a building code. By evening, the coworker clique had thinned. 2 sent me short apologies. 1 wrote a paragraph about how she had applied a story from her life to mine and forgotten that details matter. I accepted each apology with a single sentence. Thank you for your note. Please do not contact me again. I am keeping a small circle while I file. My attorney filed the petition Monday morning. He asked if I wanted to consider a waiting period with counseling, as some couples do to test intentions. I said no. Not because I am angry, though I am, because a person who can invite someone into our living room under the name of healing while their partner is still refilling a pill organizer has already told me what intimacy means to them. I can work with many ingredients. I cannot work with that. Finances are clean. My paycheck moved to the new account. I froze the joint credit card and opened one in my name. I listed shared assets and noted who would keep what. There are no children. There is no house. There are objects that will remind me of a version of us I thought was real. I let go of most of them because I am trying to build a room where breath is not an argument. My mother called, then emailed after my attorney's packet landed. The email was short. I did not realize. I am sorry. I hope you sleep. She did not ask me to protect the family name. She did not ask me to consider Grandma's feelings. She closed with, I will not post. I cried for the first time since the motel. I do not know if I cried for the apology or for the fact that it had to arrive in a format my attorney would approve. There is a quiet that follows decisions, not silence. Quiet. The new apartment has a whistle in the radiator that makes the bedroom sound like a distant kettle. I lay on the floor on the first night and listened to it whistle and thought about how many alarms I set in the last 6 months. I thought about how many I will never set again. I did not feel proud. I felt tired and clean. I will keep moving. Papers filed, lease signed, keys in my pocket, Saturday mornings for groceries, Tuesday nights with Malik, a therapist appointment on Thursday so I can untangle the parts of me that tried to fix a person with a checklist. I am not a hero for leaving. I am a man who believed a promise and then chose not to pretend it survived a vote. I will write a final update once the decree is signed. For now, I am going to label 2 boxes, boil pasta on a too small stove, and sleep. Comment 1. Textbook aftermath. Clean packet to family, lease secured, utilities moved, P.O. box set, witness for pickup, attorney filed. Keep copies of everything and avoid back and forth. You did the right kind of hard work. Comment 2. As someone who watched partners carry the real load through treatment, seeing that pill organizer in the breathwork video hurt me. You are not cruel. You are protecting yourself. Hold your line. We see you. Final update, 11 months later. 11 months is long enough for a ringtone to stop sounding like a threat. The divorce decree arrived in the mail on a rainy Tuesday. The envelope was thin, the kind that does not care if you're ready. I read the first page standing at the counter and then sat on the floor because my legs wanted to be closer to something solid. The word dissolved has a sterile ring to it. It also has mercy. You do not have to keep stirring a mixture that will not bind. Life now looks like routines with edges I can hold. I make coffee at 6 and watch the maple tree turn from green to spare and back again. The radiator still whistles. I have learned to hear it as a signal that the room is doing what it should. I run 3 mornings a week. I cook for 1 without accidentally making enough for 2. I see Malik on Tuesdays, my therapist on Thursdays, and my mother twice a month for lunch, where she asks about my sleep instead of my patience. She does not post about miracles. She mails recipes clipped from magazines like a person rediscovering paper. Tessa moved apartments too. Owen did not last. That is not a victory. It is a data point I try not to use as proof of anything, except that flares burn bright and then leave cold metal behind. A mutual friend told me Tessa still talks about growth and healing. She has not contacted me in months. Her last email through counsel said she hoped I was well and that she had learned from pain. There was no sentence where she called what happened cheating. I have accepted that I will not get that word from her. I do not need it to be true. Rachel and I have a truce. She sent an apology that did not try to divide blame into equal piles. It named the brunch vote in the poll and the way she mistook entertainment for support. I wrote back that I appreciate the clarity and that I wish her a life where she does not have to learn lessons at other people's tables. We exchange holiday texts with photos of casseroles and nobody mentions breathwork. Work is stable. I asked for and got a project that lets me fix schedules instead of fixing people. There is something soothing about logistics that do not lie about their inputs. A truck late is a truck late. You call, you reroute, you update the board. I am good at that. My manager says my calm is a resource. It is not calm, it is practice. I went back to urgent care once for a tetanus shot after a cut at work. The chairs still feel like school desks. The infusion room smell still lives somewhere I can find it if I think too long. But my body did not prepare to sprint. I sat, read a paperback, and thanked the nurse without making it a metaphor. I started dating in the gentlest version of that word. Coffee, 2 museum walks, a 3rd date where we cooked in my too small kitchen and laughed when the smoke alarm protested a skillet that got too hot. I told her early that I do not do open relationships and that I have no interest in reenacting a healing arc. She said she does not do polls at brunch. I like that answer more than I should. The decree sits in a folder labeled closed. Inside the same drawer is a torn page from the notebook I used in the first months, the one where I wrote lines from my shaking body. The page says, "Consent is a door we both hold." I left it there as a relic. I do not need to look at it every day. I know the sentence by heart. I am grateful for the boring things that saved me. A separate account, a P.O. box, a friend who stood in a doorway and said one sentence like a code, a landlord who cared about liabilities, an attorney who preferred packets to speeches, a maple tree that does not ask me to name what season looks like before it arrives. When strangers ask, I say only that a marriage ended because our definitions of fidelity did not match. When friends ask, I say I carried what I could, and when the weight turned into a vote, I put it down. What I do not say is that I still sometimes wake up at 4 and count breaths out of habit. I let myself count to 10. Then I breathe because breath is not owned by anyone and because it keeps the room from tilting. I do not feel triumphant. I feel like a person who stopped pretending his spine was made for other people's experiments. I can sit on my own floor and watch rain hit the window without rehearsing an argument. I can watch the kettle whistle and hear only water. I can choose not to turn a class into a creed. I can choose not to explain why a pill organizer in a poll should never share a frame. Thank you to the voices who told me that caregiving is love, not a debt. That consent cannot be retroactive. That boundaries are not barbed wire. They are painted lines on floors so people do not burn when they lean in at the wrong time. I am done painting lines for other people to cross. I am walking mine. This is my last update. The decree is signed. The keys are on my own ring. The stove is small and fine. The maple is turning again. I am going to refill the salt, text Malik, and let the kettle sing.